Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to PMI Live. It is, of course, Friday afternoon. It's the last Friday of the month. It is 1500 hours in the UK, which where else would you be other than on PMI Live with us? This week, I am joined by my colleagues, Anthony and Dennis, who I'll ask to introduce themselves very shortly. This is episode 111, 111. Lucky for some, I don't know, it rhymes, let's run with that. Revolutionise your process excellence using AI agents. AI agents is the topic of today, and we'll be discussing that from multiple angles. PMI Live, as the name suggests, is a live and interactive event. We are here. We've got a couple of things we want to share with you during the live session. So do two things. One, take advantage of the fact that we are live and we are here and in the room. Put your questions in the Q&A section, or if you've got an observation, general comments, put them in the chat functions. You'll find those up above. And I'll facilitate the session and put those to both Anthony and Dennis as we progress. If you're joining us on the live streams, you're very welcome. You won't be able to take part in the polls, or drum roll, please. Come on, both drum rolls. There we go. Thank you. Drum rolls. We have that wasn't rehearsed, as you could probably tell. We have this afternoon a really exciting launch, which is of one of our own client-facing AI agents, which we're calling the Process Companion AI. We're launching that in beta form. We know, those of you who are regular with PMI Live, you know we really like to try and push the boundaries. So we're doing two things this afternoon. We're doing a live demo of a new AI agent, creating it before your eyes. We're also doing a live demo of our new AI Process Companion. What's more, we're launching it today, and anyone that is on this session will get exclusive access shared with them. So in order to do that, you need to be in the live session. So hop on over to pmi.co.uk/webinars and you can join the live session. Still time to register. So we're releasing that URL to everyone that's participating. We're really excited. We hope you will be too. We've done lots of testing, lots of scenario planning, and as you can tell from Anthony's terrified face, it's a product that he's been leading the development of, and it's never seen the real world before. So it'd be great to get feedback from everyone that's participating, and it'd be even more satisfying to see it in the hands of real users. So without further ado, Dennis, Anthony, can I come to you first? Dennis, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, Rich. Lovely to be here again with all of you. Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Crommentuijn-Marsh, and I'm a direct consultant with PMI and also head of data analytics and insights.
And where have you been since we last saw you? You're a regular on PMI Live, Dennis.
So I'm still working intensely with two different clients, one of which where we're setting up a multi-year transformation program, which was in the kickoff phase of, and with another product customer, which is a high-value engineering company. I'm helping them with advanced diagnostic methods to understand some very intricate issues within their operations, which is also tremendous.
Oh, fantastic. Anthony, would you like to introduce yourself and give us an idea of the client work that you've been working on since we last saw? I think we only saw you last month, didn't we, on PMI Live?
So it feels recent. Yeah, so I've Anthony Richardson. I'm a senior consultant at PMI. In terms of client work, I've been working with a client in the renewable energy sector doing lean practitioner training, which is really interesting because the team there are working on some really ambitious projects, genuinely trying to provide more clean energy better, not just working on the small things. So it's really, really rewarding piece of work to be doing with them. But also, as you mentioned, I've been doing a lot of tinkering, building, testing, refining with AI agents and a lot of learning as well.
Great. And yeah, I can see several people from the clients that Dennis and Anthony have just been talking about are live with us today. So welcome. Great to have you with us. So, Anthony, would you like to take us through the content today? And also, I guess, from both of you, once Anthony's taken us through the content, why this subject? Why now?
Yeah, so today, hopefully you can see my slides. Today we'll be covering this idea of a digital workforce, of the agentic future. It's the hot topic at the moment in the whole kind of AI and automation world. And I think what we're going to broadly do today, or attempt to do, is make the case that This isn't just another incremental development. This is really the beginning of the true future of AI, and perhaps what we've seen up to now is more of a transition. So we're going to talk about that digital workforce, what it is, what do we mean by that, but then we're going to try and make things super practical and actually show you in kind of real time how an AI is, or how an AI agent is created, and then we'll show you, do a show and tell on what we've been working on behind the scenes in terms of the process companion AI.
So, okay, so Dennis, why this topic now?
Well, as you know, AI has now been in existence for a number of years, but it's really in the last year where it started to grab hold of the organizations. And every day, Rich, Anthony, and I, when we wake up, we watch our AI summary, and guess what? Since we slept, something has changed again. Somebody's again brought out either a new agent or new development, a new insight or new way of agents working well together. So we're right in the middle of that curve of masses of new agents hitting the market and people trying to make sense of how best to use them.
Okay, and folks, you will have heard Anthony use the term agentic just then. So it's an increasingly common term, and in this context, Anthony is referring it to the world of work, the agentic future world of work. So just to clarify on that front. Okay, cool. Would you like to kick us off then?
Yeah, sure. So as we go through the webinar today, obviously there's going to be a lot of interesting ideas that we share with you, and some hopefully really interesting tech that we demo for you. But as well as kind of being lost in the intellectual side and the tech demo, what we really want to position early on here is this idea that, this future is here now. So really do try and keep your mind open to your own organization, your own processes, to think about, well, where would I be able to benefit from some of this, or where would my teams be able to benefit from some of this?
Okay, fantastic. So specifically on that second point, I wanted to pick up because I think it's really easy to fall into a trap with some of this stuff. And it depends on the direction you come from. But I think particularly if you're unfamiliar, there's so much development, and as Dennis said, so rapidly changing. There's quite a kind of concept out there of fear, rightly so. And I think that stems from uncertainty. What I see our role as performance excellence change agents, though, is to focus on this final word that Anthony's got here. What's in the definition on screen? What's the opportunity here? How do we turn this technology into an opportunity? And I think it's critical that the performance excellence, process excellence community take responsibility for that, because ultimately it's an agent of change. And that change should not be confused with improvement. That's where we come in. As improvement practitioners, we need to ensure that these opportunities and these changes are just that. They are opportunities for real improvement, not just change. And particularly with tech, it's really easy to fall into that trap, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So
I think really useful place to start then. Try to define what we mean by this agentic future, these AI agents. And I'm actually going to start by saying what it is not. So we're not just talking here about the use of ChatGPT or Copilot or just the chatbots as they come out of the box. We're talking about these recent developments where we're able to take those systems or systems like them and then do something further with them, begin to specialize them, begin to tailor them. So when we talk about an AI agent, we're talking about an artificial intelligence that's been given sort of these specific pieces of knowledge, specific pieces of or specific abilities or actions that can start to behave more like a colleague and less just like a kind of a general person I can talk to about things.
Or a general search engine, I guess,
yes.
as well. It's the other distinction there. Yes. So let me just play that back to you then, Anthony. So what I'm hearing there is it's got boundaries around its knowledge. It's curated in terms of what it's looking at and also how it responds.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And the processes it can follow, the actions it can take, they've all been given to it by the organization. Yeah.
Which is interesting. So I don't know if you can see that definition I've just popped in the chat. That was actually generated by Copilot on my other screen. it's an interesting, slightly broader terminology in that definition, talking about autonomy, which is an interesting thing to consider. And I think you start straying into that territory and you start thinking about that concept of fear I was talking about.
Yeah, we Dennis and I talked a lot, didn't we, about this word autonomy. And I think for now, more comfortable talking about proactivity. So the ability for this agent to intervene, for it to be proactive rather than reactive. True autonomy, in a sense, it has a big "it depends" alongside it. But yeah, certainly much more proactive and active in general in our processes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we wanted to begin, therefore, with a poll. So considering these forms of AI, we'd be really interested to know where everyone is right now. So what are you doing with AI agents specifically? So it might be that you're not doing anything with them. That answer one there. Or it might be that you're still unsure. You're not quite sure what we mean by agent. Answer two. And again, if that's still unclear, please do tell us, because part of the aim of today is to answer that question. And then for those following options, we want to know, have you heard of it? Maybe done some basic research with it? Have you actually started testing and experimenting with it? Or are you really, really heavily using it? We'd really like to get a good feel for where the audience is with this.
Excellent. So Neil's going to put down the chocolate custard cream and launch the poll for us. And just select the answer that Anthony just ran through there. Select the one that most represents. Don't agonize over it. Which one most represents where you and your organization are today? Let's see what we're getting. Now we can see those results coming in live into the chat. Okay. And be honest with us as well, because it helps us steer the discussion. So if what we've just described isn't clear, let us know. And if that is where you are, put a bit more in the chat for us, would you, so we can respond to specific kind of challenges and concerns. Okay, so what have we got coming in here then? So we've got a bit of a mix actually with the first three options, and with a few people doing nothing with agents at this point. It's good to know. We've got some people so we've got 30% saying we've heard of it, we've done some basic research. Another 30% saying some initial testing experimentation with agents. And then down at the lower end, we've got 10% are actively using it, and 3% with not sure what we mean. Okay, so as I say, if you are in that category of still not sure what you mean, just express a bit more if you would into the chat, so we can flesh that out a bit for you. Yeah. So based on your knowledge and your work with clients and customers and general knowledge of the industry, guys, where does this sit with your expectations? Is the audience representative of what you were expecting? To confirm or disconfirm your theories? Let me put it that way.
The clients I'm working with, this is very much aligned. Where people are starting to research, or they've set up incubators which are heavily invested in figuring out use cases. But in terms of the actively using of AI agents, I don't see much evidence yet. So I'm very impressed by the 10% of people who said yes, we actually are using it.
Yeah, and you've just given me another angle here that we could take this by, because of course we intended this as what are your companies doing, as in have they developed their own, or have they had them developed for them? Of course, the other angle is you're using ones provided by other organizations. So I guess we've got a mix in here. So it's good to know. Anthony, any surprises in here? Where you thought it would be?
No, I think when Dennis and I earlier, Neil's off camera with his biscuits. When Dennis and I were talking earlier, we specifically asked each other, so what do we think the prediction's going to be? And I think this is almost exactly what we predicted, which is nice. But by design, as you can imagine, the presentation, the agenda we've got today has something for every one of these categories. So if you are doing some initial testing and experimentation, we'd love to hear from you, because we'd love to know what you're learning, and we'll share on this webinar what we're learning with you. But if you are still confused, or you're just doing some initial research and you just want to learn more, again, hopefully this webinar would be the perfect thing for you.
Okay, cool. And we've had a question in already around just saying that I was at a conference yesterday and the keynote speaker was saying how their branding agency sets up multiple agents to speak to each other and work together. So one for branding, one for tone of voice, one for design, etc. And the question is, has anyone else got any experience of how those work together, and how do you find it? Okay, we'll come back to that. Great question. Keep those kind of things coming. Okay, let's go.
Okay. So hand over to you then, Dennis, to take us through this age of the digital workforce.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a bit of history, and then we're going to work forwards on the next set of slides. So up till now, the machine was still seen pretty much as a tool where the human was in charge of the input. So this is in 2 dimensions, the tech and the human. So we create input, and therefore we create an app, a program or algorithms. Think about Excel, and things are doing something on our strict instructions. What we're now seeing is that we're moving to the next dimension, which is where we are right now, the 2020s. The machines are now co-creating alongside humans, so what's called generative AI. And therefore, the skill of the human here is to prompt and lead the AI, the large language models, or the agents, into giving us the best possible answer based on our knowledge of a topic or an area. And then we move to the 3rd dimension, which is for the foreseeable future, where machines now will become part of our workforce, the digital labor, the digital workforce, which means that also our jobs as individuals will start to evolve from the doing, the creating, input, prompting, leading, but now to managing the digital workforce.
I was listening to the radio while I was running at lunchtime today, and they had a creative video editor on, talking about how some of the generative AI solutions have transformed her work, but at the same time created a whole load of non-value added checking work that she feels she has to do to check what it's created. And it's intriguing. That's the role of the improvement practitioner here. Struck me that that's the kind of thing we need to find processes to ensure that the value added time is maximized.
No, indeed. And it's the critical thinking piece where, at least in the test that Anthony and I are doing, that's where it still falls short. Are you sure this is right? And then when you challenge the AI agents, oh no, you're right, let me correct myself. So it is evolving learning, but you can't trust yet what the agent is providing to you.
Okay.
So digital labor. If you think about the AI agent as a digital labor entity, that means that now work is carried out by systems which we call intelligent systems, which means, back to that word that we used before, is this proactive, where based on basic instructions, so linguistic instructions, digital labor is able to carry out tasks autonomously, which also means it can start to think, learn, relearn, and then make the best possible decision. So again, 3 steps. If you think about the previous state, we had our customer, and it was the human, the supplier, which had a direct link with your customer, was supported by tech in the background. Then what we saw was an evolution, where not only the human is interacting with customers, but also a front end of the tech side, and the back end generated or created by the human. So now, for example, if I do a query on an online platform with my energy provider, I can chat to an agent, a bot, and say, hey, how's it going with my energy bills? Do they need to go adjust the direct debit, yes or no? But now we're evolving to a 3rd stage, which in its current state, increasingly what we see is this multi-agent approach, what you've just mentioned as well with your marketing example, where there's multiple agents, digital agents, interfacing and interacting with the customer, supported by the knowledge, so IT systems, the data, policies, you name it. And the human is this prompting and leading the creation of the agent. Which leads to a question, Anthony, which we now have to ask ourselves, which is, how is the human now interacting with the customer? Is there still a space for it or not? What's your view, Anthony?
Yeah, well, anyone who's heard me speak about this before could predict what I'm going to say, but I think that final arrow will always be there. We will always want it to be there, As we move closer and closer to this agentic future, especially where you've got this multiplicity of agents, they're interacting with each other, they each specialize maybe in different things. Managing that output, and given some of the issues we know are ongoing with these AI agents, managing, observing, refining that is a very human process, not just in that a human needs to run it, but a human needs to solicit the feedback from the end customer. And the human needs to treat those AIs in an almost human-like way. We'll see a little bit of that when we get into the live demo, but in terms of how they're instructed, how they're managed, how we refine their output. So yeah, that arrow for me will always exist. It's always ultimately a human process.
Which therefore, if you think about the transition, therefore, the current state to the future state, which I'll show on the next slide, we're going to talk about a number of dimensions around this. The nature of the work. And again, this is a bit of a black and white one, but it's useful for illustration. If you think about part of your job, which is routine-based, manual, repetitive, important, but low value add. So there's not much judgment and learning needed. That's a current state, but the future state will be where we have these intelligent, knowledge-driven tasks, which require much more understanding, adapting prior to making a decision. So back to a bit of more that autonomy by the agent. Therefore, who's doing it? Today, it's the human using a platform. In the future, we'll see AI agents, which are our digital co-workers, the digital labor. Where will it happen? Now, at the moment, all of us are remote. We're all logging in remotely from different parts of the world into this webinar. But in the future, we will be surrounded by this envelope of silently integrated agents. You know, we see also now the advent of it incorporated into glasses, where we have live feeds about what we're looking at, and it's just there as a silent buddy supporting us. Which also means job structures will start to change. If at the moment you're doing a task-based or fragmented type of job, multitasking, we will see therefore not only continuous and autonomous agents, but that last word, scalable. But a number of clients, they have robot farms or RPAs, and say, how many bots do you have? Oh, we have 6 or 7 bots, which all do a certain task. The scalability that we'll see in the future will make and enable us to go from 1 to 1,000 just overnight almost, and it will only be limited at the moment, at least, by our ability to provide energy to these AI farms where the bots are stationed or located. Which therefore brings me to that last point, and this is the one which at the moment is probably the single hottest topic of concern around AI agents. At the moment, humans create, design, they check the output, and then they are in the interface with the client. What we're now moving to, therefore, is that the algorithms are shaped by entities that we don't see the logic of. The logic is implicit within the machine. And therefore, we don't know the rationalization, the reasons how an agent came up with a certain answer. So what we'll see increasingly is less visibility of the thinking processes unless we find active ways of making it more visible. And Anthony, what's your experience on that point?
Yeah, it's I think this has been one of the main concerns from day one, is often referred to in the AI industry as the black box problem, and it seems to just be inherent with AI, as it is with ourselves. I mean, ultimately, human decision making is in some way inscrutable. It happens in here. I can tell you a story about why I made that decision. Some of that story will be true, but we know from psychology, from research, probably most of that story is false, and there's an illusory element to how we think in general. My personal opinion is that's why AIs hallucinate. They've inherited a lot of that from us because they're designed on us and our data. So yeah, this future, this will be the hot topic for the foreseeable future, is the alignment. So how do we keep them pointed at the right goals? And then that transparency, how do we make sure that their thinking process aligns with ours?
Definitely.
So the question here, therefore, is where does this leave us in terms of using AI agents? So Anthony.
Yes. So in terms of using AI agents, if you take nothing else away from this, I do want you to take away that this is actually all very easy. Everything that I'm about to explain, demonstrate, and show to you in terms of the practicalities of how to make an agent can be done by anyone, with no coding or technical knowledge. So I've positioned that. But to really make this concept understandable of the agent, I just want to leave the AI for a second and just talk about human intelligence and how it is employed and deployed in an organization typically. If you think about just a normal, intelligent human being, and you ask that person, do you know how to make a cheeseburger? If you ask me that, I would say yes. If you ask most people that, they would say, yes, I can picture how to make a cheeseburger. Okay, but if you wanted to make it really specific, if we want to bring this into an organizational context, we could ask the question, can you make a Big Mac? Now, I've never worked at McDonald's, so I can't make a Big Mac. It blew my mind recently when someone pointed out to me that a Big Mac only actually has one slice of cheese in it. In my head, it's got two. But if you actually look, it's one and it's at the bottom of the Big Mac, which is, anyway, might just be me misremembering things. But the point is, unless you've worked there, which I haven't, and many people haven't, you wouldn't know specifically how to do that. If we want to make a Big Mac, we need some additional information. We're going to need some instructions. We're going to need to be told, you now work for McDonald's, so you're adopting this new mindset of I am, food preparation professional, let's say. But on top of that, I'm going to need some specific instructions on how to prepare each of the products, probably documented and written. In my first week at the organization, I'm probably going to be reading them, on the evening to make sure that I'm ready for work the next day, because I don't want to feel like I'm in a panic. And on top of that, there'll be more information. There might be as I'm onboarded as an employee, there might be a corporate website with other policies and useful information that I will need to do this job effectively. And finally, most importantly, I need to be given permissions and actions. There might be tools, machines, codes to access things that I'm going to need to be given so that I can now not just be a person from the street, but be from McDonald's as an organization. I can cook a Big Mac reliably, repeatedly. So in order for an agent to be an agent and an AI, we need to do the same thing. First, we need to select a model. So that could be ChatGPT, could be Gemini, whatever model that is. Think of that as the raw intelligence, like the person who walks in off the street. For it to become an agent, I need to give it some specific instruction. I need to give it some specific knowledge. And I may, if I'm a bit more advanced, I may choose to then give it some specific abilities and actions as well. Now, I'm going to cover those less so today because they are a bit more advanced, but I will mention and refer to them. In the AI we've been creating, we have used some action capabilities. So that's the general model. If you want an agent, it needs this additional content. So the question then becomes, well, how do I do that? How do I take Copilot? How do I take ChatGPT and give it this additional instruction? Before I explain technically how to do it, let me give you the underpinning reason of what we're trying to achieve, or what good looks like in terms of these instructions. So for the instructions, before we do anything technical, we want to think about the objective. So what is the overall objective for this agent? What does it need to achieve? Then the process. What steps do I want it to go through when it's achieving this goal? How do I want it to approach that objective? Interestingly, its style. What sort of a style should it take? And again, this is perfectly normal. You think about recruiting a human being. Very different style you would take recruiting a human being maybe for a bar than it would be for the legal bar. There would be two very different styles you would adopt. Same for constraints. The constraints are the things that we absolutely must do, or the agent absolutely must do, or the agent absolutely must avoid. So, if you want an agent that only gives answers to questions and it doesn't ever solutionize or theorize, tell it that in the instructions. Once we've done that, we add knowledge. knowledge really breaks down into a couple of useful categories. First would be reference information. So again, what are the instructions, or not instructions, what are the data points, the knowledge, the policies, procedures that you might have stored as an organization that we want this agent to refer to. And another really useful subset of that would be example output. So, you know, you want to create an agent that's really good at maybe filling out a certain type of form for you. Give it some examples of well filled out forms, or some examples of badly filled out forms, to help it understand what that looks like.
And there's a degree of tone of voice in there, isn't there, Anthony, as well, and setting the style that you want it in. And you know, I think one of the questions earlier on mentioned marketing tone of voice, that kind of thing. How do you want this to come across?
Yes.
Gives you that level of customization.
Yeah, flexibility. And it's really funny because you can be very, very specific, and kind of you can be quite directive with that style when you're writing the instructions. You can spend a lot of time really honing the types of language you want it to use, the types of language you don't want it to use. In most of these AI creation environments, just out of interest, the area where you provide instruction is usually, at the very least, thousands of characters long.
Yeah.
And you can over-engineer these things as well. That's another lesson that we've learned. But the underpinning kind of lesson to take from that is, so we really do want to dig into that style and talk through it in detail. The final thing worth mentioning is actions as well. So this raises the AI to be able to do certain things like you know, send emails, move data from system A into system B, send a notification to a colleague, whatever that might be. The idea being, and this is the best way I've heard this explained, is that if you have all of this, then what you have isn't just someone you've kind of dragged in off the street to ask questions to, which is, you can think of as Copilot as it is now, but you actually have a colleague, you know, someone who has that organizational context, they have the tools, the access. Now we stand a chance at really getting something done quickly, liberating us to just ask the right questions.
Yeah, okay.
And isn't that interesting, just that point? Because if you think about what we teach as in our profession to the people we work with, the clients we work with, it's about, in the first and foremost, we teach them asking good questions, not necessarily knowing the right answer, because that's where the process experts come in.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So all of that thinking around the right question, around what's the overall aim that we're shooting for, goes into this. I'm just calling it agnostically a development tool. So I'll explain this further shortly, but if you're a Microsoft organization, this will be Copilot or Copilot Studio. But if you're in another organization, there are other tools. ChatGPT, for example, I think it's called custom GPTs, but it's the same thing. And there you will have an interface that gives you this area to write out the instructions, configure anything like actions if you are going down that route as well, and link to that knowledge. So for most organizations, you know, that could be data on a SharePoint site, or data in a system somewhere, maybe in a big database, in a table, whatever it might be. We're pointing the AI at that location. Also handles web-based knowledge very well, so it can be public domain websites. That can often be very, very useful. So just to clarify then, we're going to talk about Copilot, as I mentioned, because we are a Microsoft organization. One thing that's just important to note straight away, I'm just going to pull up the pointer so I can point at things. When we talk about Copilot, the word Copilot appears across a lot of Microsoft, and it might actually mean a different thing depending on what you're looking at. As a general rule, what we mean by Copilot is Microsoft's rebranding of ChatGPT. They invested a lot of money in OpenAI. They have that model, the GPT-4 model, 4.5, I think it is now. And they wrap that within their own kind of branding and safety features, you know, all of the administration that your IT's organization can now, your organization's IT can now do with it. and we call that Copilot. On top of that, we then have Copilot agents. So I'm going to demonstrate those for you shortly, but Copilot agents are basically ways to take Copilot and add all of those things I just mentioned on the previous slide, all of that instruction and knowledge in a nice, easy, user-friendly way, no coding required. Then we have Copilot Studio. This takes the same kind of an idea, but it beefs it up for super users. That would be my best short explanation of what Copilot Studio is doing. I would still remark it doesn't have a very steep learning curve and is still very much in what we would call the low code, no code space. So anyone who's familiar with tools like Power Automate or just the Power platform in general would feel completely at home using Copilot Studio. And again, what this isn't an advert for Microsoft, I can honestly say from my research, the same is true of many of the other online solutions. They're all very, very drag and drop, intuitive, almost looking at the thought pattern of a conversation or of a process you want the agent to go through really visually on screen.
What we've found is that it's actually the verbal and linguistic reasoning skills, the ability to express things clearly, where we can take a basic agent and develop into an advanced agent.
Yeah. So, and what Microsoft are expecting us to do, just really quickly with these, is really just use them, test and learn from them. There's no kind of cost to making it. Once you've got the Copilot license, of course, we know how those things work. Once you've got that, there's no individual cost against these things. Microsoft really are designing them to be an almost disposable thing that can be made and tested by those who are operating processes. So, for example, a few weeks ago, Rich and I were navigating a bit of a tricky kind of government process that we had to try and work out.
Government procurement process, yeah.
Government procurement process, and government websites can be really tricky in terms of how they're organized. The documentation that they provide can be very cumbersome to read through. What we wanted was some sort of magic intelligence that could just really specifically look at that information, hoover it up, and then answer specific questions we might have and help us unravel this process we needed to go through. And so we used just the basic Copilot agents to do this, pointing it at the government's website, adding the documents. It took me no longer than 10 minutes. And then we had this way to interrogate that information much more rapidly, and using the references provided, check for those hallucinations. We could go and look at the document and make sure that the agent had interpreted it correctly, so that Rich and I could interpret it correctly.
So examples of things we're asking, like, can we bid for this lot and that lot? Is it possible to bid in this category in this way? And the agent was able to look at the reference materials and give the answers back. The other version of that story, by the way, is that I asked Anthony to handle it for me, and rather unfairly, and then he created this in order to help with that challenge.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
But I like your diplomacy.
We wouldn't be here if it hadn't have happened. So I think it's time to get into the case study, just so we can save as much time for sort of questions and PDSA as possible. So for this, we originally wanted to actually create this agent we're about to show you live. There are some very good reasons why we can't do that, just in terms of the user interface and things it shows that should just stay internal to your organization. So we don't want to broadcast that on a webinar. So instead, we've got a bit of a kind of here's one that we did earlier moment. But before I cut to it, I just want to explain what this agent is trying to achieve. It kind of started from an interesting piece of work Dennis was doing. Do you want to talk about that for a moment, Dennis?
Yeah, sure. So when we work with clients, whether it being on improvement projects or to help them to understand the work as a process, we use the SciPoc as one of the basic documents to understand the higher level, what the purpose of a process is, and some key data around it. So when people create this and I review them, and I review hundreds of them over the years, I see, same issues, same challenges coming up, same things being blank, etc. So I thought this is a great use case to test out an integration of an AI agent to help me with a prior filtering, but also to help our clients, where they can upload it and say, hey, how's my cyborg looking, and as it says here, analyze it, and can you make some recommendations?
Yeah. So that would be super helpful then. I know I've been seeing a few myself. So you're thinking, to play that back, so what you're thinking is, or was, let's have an agent that just is really good at giving feedback on SciParks. And then as someone who feeds back on SciParks, I can use that to help me. It can do some pre-filtering, but also wouldn't it be cool if we could just give that to people?
Yeah, absolutely. So help myself, and if I'm comfortable with it, I can then, help others, of course.
So, starting from that, Dennis did this awesome piece of work to craft all of his knowledge into a document. He then gave it to a couple of his colleagues to review. We added little bits here and there where we could, but honestly, it was pretty much a complete work. Can tell it was definitely a hot topic for you, Dennis. And so what we've done is, in the here's one I did earlier moment, is we've created what for some reason I've named Tony. I don't know why I picked that name. I did just we were experimenting earlier and it just came out when I was asked for a name. So what this what you're seeing here, if I can just break this down, is only really the same as the slide we were looking at earlier. We have some instructions, we have some knowledge, and we have a few other things down here. I'll cover those in a moment. They're not super scary, they're not super technical. Really what I want to focus on again is the instructions and the knowledge. So if I just come back a moment to this slide we looked at earlier, just to clarify, so everything you're seeing on screen now, this orange section is this box here. And you can see, in terms of the instructions that I've given for Tony, I've really broken it down into a goal, right? So it should provide feedback on SciPoc that a user provides. Process, review that information, look for areas where additional information should be captured, look for other logical inconsistencies, etc., etc. Constraints, I really want you to pay attention to use of verb noun to describe processes and activities, etc., etc. Only use this information. And style, Tony should use, I've gone with an informal, friendly conversation style. I've just kept it nice and simple for the purpose of this demo. So that took me, sorry, go on.
I was just going to observe, Anthony, there, for those of us that have grown up here using databases, this is such an alien concept because you're able to give it instructions that are actually in the written word, in prose almost. Rather than selecting if, then, else in the classic database kind of structure when you're structuring a report or putting a filter on something. You can see here free text written word instructions, which is quite different, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Dennis. I know you were making this point several times over this morning of suddenly there is a skill in just writing and just thinking. And that's the value we bring and will always bring.
So is this an element of that human interaction that you had on your graphic earlier on?
Yes, yeah. It's just this is where the rubber hits the road of what we truly value as people. It's in that thinking of and building the instruction and evolving it over time. And the knowledge is even more straightforward. You can literally just add URLs. So we've added here, just as an example, our knowledge hub. We just took the URL, pasted it in, and hit go. And we also uploaded Dennis's special document as a PDF. So that, again, it's a written document that Dennis has really thought through with all of this great qualitative information about what makes a good SciPoc. So the theory is that...
And by the way, and deliberately, you probably have noticed the word knowledge spelled without an N. The nice thing about these linguistic models is you can misspell words. It'll still get it right. It still thinks, I think you meant knowledge here. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So this is deliberate.
It's weird because
it was college, yes.
It makes mistakes like that so much easier to slip through the cracks because there are less failures caused by it now. Yeah, no, I completely agree. So what we're able to do then with this is... for example, I just have a prompt here that we can try. So once you have all of this entered in to the agent,
so Anthony, just to be clear what we're looking at here, the left-hand side of the screen is the configuration. The right-hand side is a preview of the live agent.
It's a preview. That's exactly correct. Yeah, so we're looking here at the agent itself. That agent can be shared when you're ready, but before you're ready, there is absolutely this preview area here where you can come and give it example prompt. So, you know, this one is designed to look at SIPOCs. So I've taken an element of a SIPOC and I've said, okay, you know, give me some feedback on whether these measures sound relevant to the process steps that I'm associating them with. One of the first things that, you know, when you're doing a SIPOC can start to become a bit of a headache. Now, this is a bit of a softball. I've given it an easy example. You can road test these as heavily as you like. But again, in our experience, the results are very good, even with more complex SIPOCs and examples. So here, as you can see, we're given some feedback. We actually have experimented with, I won't do it live now, but it does work. You can actually just copy and paste an entire SIPOC, ignoring the formatting, put it into this agent, and it can still kind of unpick it and give you pretty good feedback on that SIPOC. So that's the basics of agents. And again, you know, Microsoft really do intend these to be quite throwaway. You can see there's a few that I have just currently that I'm using for various jobs that I'm working on. You know, one of the things I'm working on at the moment is designing a new course for PMI, and I've designed an agent that is now trained on the underpinning curriculum requirements for that course. So I'm freed to bring the creativity, bring the PMI knowledge, and ask those questions of what am I trying to achieve. So it's those kinds of use cases that we're looking for to really speed up our processes.
Actually, we just had a comment in the chat. This would be amazing to take out human biases when reviewing and assessing. And I've commented back in the chat that we've recently done just that in a trial session. Some members of our team built an agent to review real submitted project reports against a predefined set of criteria and do two things. One, against that criteria, decide if it had passed or failed. And secondly, give feedback on areas for improvement. And it did so in exactly the same style. It was created in the same style that you've just done there. It did so with phenomenal reliability.
Yeah. And what that frees the human operator to do is review the output of that AI and learn from its mistakes. And almost all of the thought process then becomes about improvement for the process operators. It's why one way of looking at this agentic future is a very positive way. You know, we always complain about that wasted, you know, the eighth waste of non-utilized talent for improvement effort. This is one of the biggest potential antidotes, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And you know, the human value in that example is reading what the agent has done and enhancing it, where it's adding the additional knowledge in, the personalized guidance to it. And the legwork was already done, though. Your calculations are wrong or you've missed this tool out is done.
Yes, absolutely. So, as I said, you can go a little bit deeper. Actions themselves are something that you probably would be experimenting with if you were making a more advanced agent in Copilot Studio. We're not going to cover that in detail today. We will do a very quick kind of a show and tell, though, of our slightly more advanced AI. So this is something.
Drum roll.
Drum roll again. This is something that we have developed in Copilot Studio. Development process was, I think we'd agree, fairly rapid. You know, not huge amounts of time and investment and coding. Again, it's all very low code, no code. And what we've basically been attempting to do here is to try and unlock some of the valuable knowledge. It's like what Dennis was doing with the SIPOC, but across all of our kind of pantheon of knowledge that we have written down. How can we get more value out of that? So Dennis, do you want to kind of talk through that then? Talk through the project we've been through.
Yes. So, you know, we have 40 years worth of experience, and most of it, fortunately, has been codified, i.e. written down. So, of course, we had a readily available knowledge library to our, available to us. But it still gave us some challenges, and that was the first problem that we saw. It was actually the implicit knowledge that we built up, where we still felt we hadn't made it explicit. And that's why the SIPOC use case was such an interesting one, just to check how much do you actually know and how much is not written down. So it's all about the approach. You take that knowledge within your organization, you use that in our case, Copilot Studio, and that then gives you a useful agent, in our case, the Process Companion AI. So some lessons that we learned, back to what we say, it's not technology that's the barrier, it's your ability to create structured knowledge. So knowledge management, that skill that used to be a hot topic about 20 years ago, then it actually died a death. Now we see a resurgence of that. And I'm sure you've seen in the news, prompt engineering has become now a marketable skill. So become good at structuring your thinking into a way that's easily understandable by an AI agent. And then the last thing is then that gaps in your written knowledge to turn the implicit to explicit knowledge. So that was our learning and still is our learning. So we're doing rapid PDSA on this every day when we're testing it and when we get feedback from you, the users.
Yeah. And the thing that I would say, and I wasn't sure going into it if I would be able to say this at the end, but I genuinely can say that when you look at the feedback and when it's working, when things are going good, when you look at the feedback it gives, you can really see the difference between that and any of those kind of general, if you just ask ChatGPT out of the box, you can see a huge difference. It's much more precise, structured, and you can just tell it's inherited some of that experience, and it's almost a bit surreal sometimes, but it was a really rewarding process, I thought.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so where do we go from here then?
So in terms of summarizing and next steps, so just a quick summary. So hopefully we've made this case that this future of AI agents is a positive one, likely, and a likely one. It will transform what we do. It's going to move us more to the question askers, the managers of the digital workforce. And again, that big takeaway, it's really easy to get started right now. And there are some, obvious low-hanging fruits and benefits to be had in our processes from beginning that experimentation sooner rather than later. Again, these tools are available within our corporate environment, in that secure, administrable environment. So get that knowledge in order, get that data in order so we can train those AIs. And Dennis and I had this conversation actually built up to a really interesting musing that we had as we were preparing for this webinar of, do you know what? In general, if someone from today's webinar was to say, so how do you manage, and what is this managing of the digital workforce? As we looked at it, we thought, well, it's actually a very human question. You're talking about HR processes more than IT processes, even though it's a technology that you're managing. Hopefully on an upcoming webinar, we can discuss that a bit further as it becomes more and more relevant.
So, Anthony, before you go on, there you go. Sorry, yes, go on to the access. So we are about to release to everyone that's in the live session the URL to access the live agent. What our ask for you guys is to use it, to ask it questions. It, as Anthony said, it is a broad knowledge base, a broad improvement knowledge base that we put in there. We put multiple documents, we've curated the journeys, the responses, we've branched out according to your challenges. Please use it, please try and break it. We'd love to hear your experiences from it. Anthony, I know you built something in about feedback. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's the first action that it can take. If you have some feedback when you're using Process Companion AI, just literally type it into the AI. Say, I have some feedback for you. You've been really helpful at this, but you could do with some work in this area. It will then ask you if you want to send that to PMI, just to make sure you're sure, data protection and all that kind of thing. If yes, it will send it, but it's anonymized. We won't know who it came from. It actually sends us a generative version. So it will say, hey, someone just provided the following feedback. In general, I am helpful at this, but I need some work in this area. So it will paraphrase what you've said anonymously.
So just to recap then, if I put in, I've got some feedback to provide, blah, 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 and then it's got an action built into it and it'll send that to us. Neil, would you like to provide the URL, please, to everyone that's on live? So it's housed on our website. It's a non-navigable link, so it's not a public link. Please do share it. Please don't publish it anywhere is our ask for everyone that has access to that. And also please do provide feedback. We're continuing working on it. Hopefully that works. If you have any trouble asking and accessing the system, please drop support@pmi.co.uk in an email, and we will get back to you to make sure you can get access to it. Okay, if you'd like to jump to the next slide finally, Anthony.
Yes, sure.
Okay, you've seen on the introduction, we have now integrated our Agile content to create the certified Agile Lean Six Sigma Green Belt that's available in-house and via our public schedule and on the distance and on demand schedule, as you can see there. You'll find more details at pmi.co.uk/training or scan the QR code. Next slide, please, Anthony. And on the Knowledge Hub we mentioned earlier on, we've got some new releases. We've got an interview. It was part of the Leading for Business Excellence podcast. Latest one is out now. We've got 2 more uncommon senses as well, which are in here. So simplifying sampling strategies, easy for me to say, and decode ambiguity with operational definitions with Niall and Damien. Great lessons. You'll find those all in the Knowledge Hub and as well as on all the podcast platforms. If you're a podcast platform user, you can subscribe. And the final slide should be coming up for PMI Live next month, which is, as ever, on the final Friday of the month, which will be the 30th of May, 1500 UK time. That's with my colleague Des Kelly. Stop Change Failing: How Process is the Answer to Achieving Excellence. We've had a question in about the recordings in the chat. Yes, we will share the recordings. Anyone that we publish them in the Knowledge Hub during next week, and you'll get the link as part of the Voice of the Customer surveys that will follow. Please do let us know what you think of the PMI Live that you've joined today, and do add your feedback for topics for the upcoming sessions, not least because I'm responsible for writing them and I'd really like your help, and I haven't yet got an agent to do so. So all that remains to say is thank you very much again for joining us. It's our pleasure and our privilege to be able to deliver these sessions. On behalf of Dennis, Anthony, and everyone else at PMI, wish you a great weekend, and thanks for joining PMI Live. Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Keep smiling.